Hello friends! Great news! The new version of Opentoonz, version 1.4, is now out, and you can download it at the official Opentoonz site. Just click on the download link to go to the bottom of the page, select Opentoonz, then at the bottom choose the 1.4 download for your OS. But before I installed it, just a tip, I renamed my Opentoonz stuff folder so that the install would create a brand new one, which meant it didn't use my old layout settings. Otherwise it would use my old menus that I had for version 1.3, which would mean that I wouldn't have the new menu commands. But once I did that, I installed as usual. So there's been a lot of bug fixes and stability fixes, meaning that this is the most stable and bug-free version of Opentoonz that there's been. So if you've not tried Opentoonz for a long time because it used to crash or have bugs, now might be the time to give it another go. And I've thought about putting together a quick start guide in the near future to help you get over that steep learning curve even quicker. But let me know in the comments below if that's something you'd like to see. So in 1.4 there's been lots of bugs fixed, but there's also been a ton of new features added. And you can see a list of the highlights in the online Opentoonz manual, and a full list of bugs and features on the release notes page. And I've got links to both of these in the description below, so please do take a look at all the new features. And you can now get to these direct and to the full Opentoonz manual and other links in the help menu of Opentoonz. But today I'd like to pick off just a few of my favourite highlights from this version, and to help I've linked these in the description so you can jump straight to the new feature that you're interested in. So first let me start off with something I can't really demo, but some of you will find really useful. There's a new panel for using Opentoonz for stop motion, and you get to it from the Windows menu, Stop Motion Controls. And this works with the Canon DSLR cameras and might also work with your webcam or other cameras. But for my webcam it doesn't work, so I can't demo it. But I know a lot of work's been put into this, so do take a look, see how it works for you, report any bugs or issues, and just share your general feedback with the community. Next, there's a feature for creating blank drawings directly on the timeline or the Xsheet, which is a great time saver. So if I create a new level, I can just click directly after and create a blank drawing, and it'll create a blank drawing for this level. Or if I click multiple cells and then right click create blank drawing, I get a drawing for each cell I've highlighted. And if you leave a gap after the previous drawing before your selection, it'll extend that drawing up to your selection and then add the blank drawings. So if I go down here and highlight those 6 frames, it'll extend drawing number 6 up to these, and then create drawing number 7 through to 12. And because of the feature to use the Xsheet as an animation sheet, you don't need to do that a lot of the time. You can just select the next blank frame after the drawings and then start drawing. Here it creates a drawing number 13. And this can be useful for lots of situations. For example, leaving blank drawings in between keyframes to help time them out, but also for the next new feature, the new vector guided drawing options. So there's a new feature in 1.4 which is vector guided drawing options, and this you can access using the context menu or a new panel in the Windows menu. So go to the Windows menu, down to guided drawing controls. And this is based on the old vector guided feature, but with in-betweening added to make in-betweening much easier to use. And I might make a full video on this in the future sometime, but I've only had a quick play with it, so here's a quick rundown. So first I'll create a number of blank frames. Then I'll draw on frame 1. Then I go to the final frame and turn on onion skinning so I can see frame 1. So to follow the guide of the first frame, I need to change the guide frames of where I'm choosing the image from. And with only having one drawing, you can choose either the closest or the furthest, as there's only one. If I'd drawn on a couple of frames, for instance, so if I draw on frames 2, 3 and 4, so on 2 I'll draw a triangle, on 3 a circle, and on 4 a square. So if I move to any drawing further down the Xsheet and turn on onion skinning just on drawings 2 and 3, so not including drawing 1 which has the arm picture and drawing 4 which has the square. And if I choose the guide frames from the furthest, it takes the furthest onion skin point, which is drawing number 2, the triangle. If I choose the closest, it's the closest drawing to the current frame, which is the circle, and it ignores entirely the square and the arm shape. So if I take that off and undo those drawings, so now we only have a drawing on drawing 1. So let's go to frame 18, and I'll turn on the onion skin to drawing 1, so I get to see the arm. And as I say, if you have closest or furthest guide frame, it doesn't matter in this instance as there's only one drawing, so it'll show the first line that I can trace over. And because I want to do the auto in-betweening, I'll tick the box for auto in-between, and the interpolation, I want the drawings to ease in and ease out from the first frame and into the last frame. So what we need to do is draw this line in a final position that we need it to be on drawing 18. I'm going to start at the red triangle, moving in the direction of the blue arrows. Then you get the next line, and the final line. And you can see immediately in the level strip that the in-between drawings have been completed for us. So if we look at that animation, we see the arm moving upwards. And if I just highlight them and then quickly choose edit cell numbers and swing, it'll then repeat these drawings in reverse back to drawing number 1. So I can then do repeat play and we can see that motion. And as can sometimes be the case with the in-between option, the lines aren't always perfect, but can often be used as a guide for you to draw over them. So here's a few quickie fixes while we've got some vector drawings on screen. If I choose the selection tool and highlight the whole drawing, the centre point is now much easier to see. So you can move that over here and then we can rotate the drawing around that selection centre point. And if you choose the control point editor, this one here, when you select on a line, the control points are now much easier to highlight. As you move closer towards them, they've got a larger target area, so you'll find them easier to edit. Also, many of the sliders can now grow very large. So if I choose the brush tool and then change the size of it, you'll notice it can get up to 1,000 in size, which is far too big for this drawing, but it gives you a larger scale. And finally, a much requested feature has been implemented. The brush tool now remembers the last brush that was used when changing between levels. So if I add a new level on here, and then for this level, add a new style, and then if I switch to the vector level to do some drawing, and then come back to this level, the red brush is still selected. Whereas before, it's always used to flick back to the first brush, which is really annoying. So that's a great small fix that I'm sure many of you will appreciate. The next feature is also a simple one, but has been requested for a long time, and it's something that you might expect to work out of the box, but you can now use the fill tool on raster levels. So if I add a raster level, and then draw something here, change the fill tool, create myself a new colour, I can hit fill. Simple but useful. However, there's one more thing. You'll need to consider the fill depth, which helps fill the gaps caused by anti-aliasing. But you might find you still need to fill in some parts by hand. But actually having a fill tool for raster levels is a great step forward. There's also been lots of changes to the Xsheet. So you've probably already noticed, at the left hand side here, there's a new camera column. And this means that camera keys are now shown on the Xsheet and timeline, so that once you've set up the camera moving, you can more easily change their timing without using the function editor. So if I go to the Animate mode, make sure the camera is selected at the top left here. And then if I change the scale of the camera and its position to start on the left hand side of the drawing, and then later on move it to there, as we play the animation you'll see the camera move. And if I show just the camera view, you'll see the image moving inside there. But you notice at the end of the animation, the drawing moves out, so we might want to adjust the position of these keys. So all we need to do is click on the key to select it, and then click and drag that key to a new position. And then we'll bring it back down here. So we'll take a look at that. So the camera moves up and then back down. But here's another quickie feature that's been implemented in this version. Using the animation tool to move the camera or other columns is good for large, rough movements, but to make them more precise, you can now hold the Alt key before dragging, and you can move it a smaller amount at a time to get exactly the position you want for your column. And here's another. There's now shortcuts for moving between keys. With your column selected, you can just press Ctrl and the less than or greater than key, and that jumps between animation keys. And a reminder, without pressing Ctrl, it just jumps between unique drawings. If I start at the top and press the greater than key, it moves down to drawings 2, 3, 4, 5, once more jumps to 6, 7, 8, then 9. And here's a natty bug fix that you might not even know was a problem, but I wanted to mention it just so you know about the actual feature. So if you have multiple columns, like this, and you find as your animation gets more complex, you can end up with a lot of columns on screen. So if you didn't know, you can hide them, or using Opentoonz phrase, you can fold them. So you just right click on a column header and choose Fold Column, and it collapses it to this narrow strip with a small thin header. And if you fold another one, it goes into the same strip. And you can unfold them by clicking on the header just up here, and they all pop open. And you can fold multiple by highlighting them all first before you choose Fold Column. And the bug that's been fixed was if you change the order or inserted a column, then the wrong columns would show folded. But this has now been fixed, so they work exactly as you'd expect them. So you might not even know about this level type because it's not yet been promoted as highly as the other levels have, and there's not a button on the toolbar for it, although you can add your own, but you can add notes directly onto the Xsheet. And these are similar to the memos you can add, but they act more like drawing cells, so they move around as you adjust the columns, which memos don't. So let me show you. So if you don't know, to add a new memo, you press this button here, and then you can add a bunch of text, multiple lines describing something about your animation. You can change the background colour as you need to, and then when you hit post, it appears on the Xsheet, and you can click and drag it around anywhere you like on here. And as you scroll, it says stuck in this position. But the memo is stuck relative to the Xsheet, not to the contents of it. So if this is pointing or referring to cell number 4, if I extend cell number 3, the memo doesn't move with it. It's not part of this layer. Likewise, if I add another column, it doesn't move across with that column. It's just stuck here on the Xsheet. So if you'd like your note to move around with the contents of the Xsheet, which mostly you would, you can use one of these note columns. So you just right click anywhere on a header and choose New Note Level, and then that can be moved around as any column can, and just double click in a cell and you can type the first note. And the new fix has been you can double click in any cell and add notes anywhere in that column, and you can move them around. You can extend them to last a number of frames if you're trying to highlight a selection of frames. You can move the column over here, and if you insert cells on the Xsheet, the note level cells move down the same as the drawing level cells do, and you can extend them and move them around like you can with any drawing level. Plus, for larger notes you get tooltips on them, so you can read all of your comments, but on memos you don't. To read everything you've written, you've got to open it up by double clicking. And memos can be useful because you have the multiple lines and you have the colour highlighting, but I've personally found note levels more useful most of the time. So take a look at them. And finally, there's been a few changes in the function editor. So if we take a look at the camera column for instance, and just show the animated cells, they can get quite cluttered with all the information and all the numbers on here, and often you're able to see the key values and not the numbers in between. So now you can hide these values for a clearer view. Just right click on any of the in between values and choose hide in between values. So now you can just see the keys, which could be useful. Personally, I like seeing the in between values, especially considering the other two options. You can now change the interpolation method between constant, linear, speed in and out, ease in and out by a single click. Whereas before, you had to select in between the key values of a column, then change the interpolation method at the right hand side, and then hit apply. But now, you can simply change it by right clicking on any values in the editor. And also if you highlight across multiple sets of values, you can right click and change the interpolation for multiple columns at once. Okay, so that's a quick overview of a few of my favourite improvements to this new version of Opentoonz, but there really is so much more, including a couple of gradient fills, being able to double click to load a scene, and others. So go ahead, download it, take a look at all the fixes in the release notes, and use the new improved Opentoonz. And do let me know what you think of it down in the comments below, and if you've got any questions, ask them down there. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of the next news video, to follow along with other tutorials and animations. But I'll see you next time for another video, and that's a guarantee.